Everybody. Hello. Welcome to our Yoga for the Creative Soul book club. As we round out the fourth of 4 steps in the Karma Yoga path today, we're going to be playing with an activity that is introduced on page 92 in chapter 6, that chapter on the path of Karma Yoga. The steps begin on page 93, and I would encourage you to revisit this activity, those steps on page 93, because we're going to do a version of this activity that's more suitable for this format today. So it's going to be a little bit different. The first step is to find something that you have previously made, a previous artistic expression that you didn't love. And if you want to skedaddle off, you know where that is, and you want to. You are certainly welcome to do that. But otherwise, we're going to create something on the spot in a little while. Before we get rolling, I do wish to acknowledge where each of us is, that we're existing on lands that were not originally of the people who are present here today. For the most part, these lands were colonized historically, and we honor the original caretakers of these colonized lands. I myself, on the Grand River, I'm in the region of the Six Nations and adjacent to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Agreement that brought peace to these nearby lands. You can check out native-lands.ca to learn more about the lands that you are on, and also search out the Truth and Reconciliation action steps to learn more about how you can be an ally to the original peoples. Yoga itself, a tradition coming from India. It's 5,000-year-old tradition that was originally just for the spiritual initiates and has found its way into the lives of householders. So we're very thankful that this wisdom tradition is available to us. And creativity has been going on for as long as pre-human existence, I believe, and they're continuing to find evidence, pictograms, sculptures from ancient civilizations. So we have much to learn from our ancestors and much to learn from our own wisdom. Before we get to the activity today, I wanted to play a little bit with our with this Karma Yoga path, as we're here in chapter 6 of the Yoga for the Creative Soul. It's our beginning step into following the 5 paths of yoga, and how each of these paths of enlightenment can also be applied to our creative journey. And in fact, one of the main precepts of the book is that our creative journey is inseparable from our enlightenment journey, that the impulse to create is coming from a deep and true place within us. And how we are bringing forth the truth of our soul can come through visually and through movement, dance, composition, writing composition, or musical composition. If, Julia Cameron in The Artist's Way talks about how if you don't follow your creative impulse and create that thing that's bubbling up inside of you, it will never exist. This is a sacred dharma, a spiritual purpose to create. And dharma, sacred duty, is tied up in the idea of karma, that we're meant to bring certain things to the world, and we're meant to neutralize certain things that we're already bringing to the world that are moving through us, neutralize that karma. And we can do that through a fourfold process. I'll talk about in a minute, but the fourth of those four steps is non-attachment. So that truth of the soul that's coming through us in the creative act, that's enough. We don't need to be attached to how much a tree looks like a tree, how much the chords really do blend together, or the melody reflects what we're trying to get at. The difference between what is inside of us and what winds up coming out is sometimes a very, very long distance. And the more we engage with the creative self, the shorter and shorter that distance becomes until in those moments of perfection, when it feels like the soul is creating through us, the thing that's inside of us and the output wind up being greater than the sum of their parts. We can even amaze our own selves sometimes in those magical moments. That does tend to come with practice, like everything else, though. If we're playing with non-attachment and trusting the truth that's coming through us, then we can remind ourselves, hey, I did my best. Remember last week we talked about excellence, just doing our best, and that's the most we have to do. Do your best, leave the rest. Once a thing is completed, that's the thing. And if we wish it were different, we can restart it. We always have that option, but it is what it has become. And we can love that thing, not be attached to what we thought it would be, what we expected of it, what we wanted from it. We can let that go. Another aspect of non-attachment when we're thinking of the creative journey is how others will respond to our creative efforts. This is incredibly vulnerable to create anything and share it with somebody. If you've ever read your poem or even kind of brought your drawing to somebody, it brings about almost a childlike tenderness. And what we find as we are working to build the relationship with the creative self is that doing some of that inner child work is very useful in allowing us to feel greater creative freedom, to engage with color, shape, melody, movement, when we can be playful, when we can accept our joyous nature, our curiosity. There's a lot more room for creativity, but that more childlike, free, playful, open part of ourselves also feels like it requires protection. So non-attachment in some ways actually shields us and supports those tender places. If we can also not be attached to how our efforts are received, but rather think of like, what do I need when I am showing this piece or playing this piece to someone else? What do I need? And meet that need within ourselves through a certain kind of breath, meditation, image, mantra. We feed the need to ourselves. And if we're thinking about this as mental health, likewise, when anxiety springs up, despair, depression, traumatic memories, the fear that old patterns we don't want are repeating, we think, okay, what is the need at play right now? And in whatever way we can, we apply that yoga practice to meet the need. So even as we're talking about this in the moment, some of your own vulnerabilities and needs may be arising. And let's all just together for a moment, close our eyes down, settle the body, turn up the corners of the mouth just lightly, clear the brow, smooth the forehead. So the face itself on the outside is expressing peace and upliftedness. And then tuning into that clear brow, that calm forehead, the space behind the skin, the space behind the skull. Feeling that prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that can mirror and attune and empathize. tuning into kindness within ourselves. And imagine that kindness spreading as peace and support over the face, through the brain, through the central nervous system, down the spine, and spreading that goodwill, confidence, support, unconditional love from the central nervous system out to every nerve ending, every cell, every organ and muscle. Notice that the breath might swing a little more freely. Inhale, flow, exhale. It's your uplifted face, your mind's intention spreads energetically and through the body. Support to self. And when we know we are supported within ourselves, it becomes easier to connect to that sense of non-attachment, to disconnect from those expectations and fears, the thoughts and feelings that hold us back, that prevent us from staying attuned to who we really are inside. So by feeding ourselves, we're often meeting those challenges of vulnerability, creating space for non-attachment. And non-attachment arising naturally from the preceding 3 steps in this karma yoga path. Remember, when the task is at hand, it is first acceptance of what is before us. In the creative sense, acceptance that the muse is whispering, that there's something that needs out of us, that we want to express something, accepting that call, and then concentrating on it, carving out just a bit of time and focusing on the task at hand. From there, we just do our best. Excellence. Excellence is a moving target, remember, but we do our best on that day. And from acceptance, concentration, excellence, non-attachment with practice will be readily available. It's a beautiful concept that also comes from our Indian tradition, this idea of Purnam. And this exists in the Chinese tradition and in the Japanese tradition as well, a very similar concept that I've heard it said only God is perfect. You can't get 10 out of 10, right? That, that sort of idea. But in the material reality, there is perfection. There is perfection in imperfection, because this moment, or who we are at any given snapshot of time, is the intersection of billions of moments, thoughts, emotions, lessons, sense perceptions. And Purnam speaks to acceptance because it allows us to seek the realization of perfection in the imperfect moment. Perfection in imperfection. Purnam, divine perfection in the material realm. So as we're allowing this idea of non-attachment to play through whatever comes through us, we're maybe holding a little bit more dearly this idea of mistakes as perfect. Will play into our activity for today. And while I'm giving some reminders about this activity, I'd ask that you just do some authentic movement. Just shake yourself out, stretch a little bit, loosen up. If you've been sitting so far through this connection, maybe stand up and take a few steps, kicking out your legs and rolling out your hips, shoulders, knees, ankles, elbows, wrists. Playing with facial expressions as well, shaping yourself, shaking it out. So a reminder for this activity on non-attachment to feel welcome to do the adapted version today and go back to this activity on page 93 with an effort of yours, a creative expression that brings you a little bit of displeasure, that it's hard not to attach to, that there's a place where you wish that thing were different. And now that you've given yourself a little bit of movement, awakened the cells, got the energy flowing, harmonizing a bit more through those levels of your being, settle again into your creative space. Let those eyes close down and just feel that vitality, that life from your movement practice flow through you. And then knowing what challenges you in your creative pursuits, dig into that a little bit and depict it. I'm going to draw a nose. Noses are tricky. So that's what I'm going to dig into. It's just drawing a nose. That whatever it is for you, hands or chairs. Boy, I could try to draw a chair too. Those are interesting when I depict them. Whatever it may be, just going into something that you know. Paging Dr. Freud, I picked a yellow marker so it doesn't show up, and there's no way the peanut gallery would be able to see how my nose turns out. Into purple. So here you are, you're playing with this, you're depicting this thing that you know often gives you trouble. And our next step from that, we're not going to take too long with this piece of it. The next step is for you to then take this depiction and show it to somebody. Try to find somebody you trust at least a little bit to be compassionate or quiet in their response. I am going to pause the recording to give you time to do that. But before I pause the recording, I'll show you how my nose turned out. And let me just say, back to Freud again, this definitely is meant to be a nose and not any other thing that it might potentially remind you of. So with all humility, I show you that. I'm gonna pause. Go take your thing to a loved one. And if it's got to be a pet, if you have to WhatsApp or video text somebody, FaceTime somebody to show them, that's all cool. It's it all counts. And the trick here is that when you show your piece, you notice what's happening in your body, and you if you can find that innocence, that curiosity, that sweetness, and just kind of go like, look what I made. Look at this awesome thing. It's purple, it has lines, and just be a little bit free with that. All right, and I will give you time, and then we'll reconvene. Right. How did that go? How was it showing your not great thing to someone else? We're very good, aren't we, at finding something that's closer to perfection and letting others interact with that. But to go into the thing that is more vulnerable, that lands in a different place. Even the impulse towards it, whether you actually did it or not here, the thought of doing it lights up your brain, your autonomics, in the same way as if you were actually doing it. This is on the flip side of it, right? On the feel good side, that's part of why visualization is so important, is that we create a certain state. But when it's something that creates some anxiety, some angst, an uncomfortable kind of vulnerability, we can still learn about ourselves through the engagement with that. But I do encourage you to find supportive people. Join us Wednesdays at 12:30. Reach out to me or post in the group those more vulnerable places, because we care about you. We want to know, and we're here to support your journey. But this next step is less confronting, shall we say. And here, we're now going to create something that you know you're quite adept at. Just taking a moment now and drawing or humming, perfecting a bit that you feel pretty confident with. I've drawn this shape many, many times, and we'll give you the time and space for that. Something that lands as comfortable, lands in your zone of confidence, that when you look at it, you think, oh yeah, that's all right. In the book, it actually has you go back to something that's almost finished that you're quite pleased with. All right. And I have lots of practice drawing yogi stick figures. Guess why? And so I just popped off this little meditating heart person. Maybe it's a self-portrait, who's to say? And I will give you a bit of time to engage with that thing, that expression that comes out of you with a bit more skill, or challenges your non-attachment less, and again, give you the time and space to share that with somebody. Notice what comes up for you as you're sharing, and continuing to feed yourself that need, making sure that the need that is at play is being met all the while that you're sharing. Welcome back. So, as is the case so often in our yoga journey, as we're playing through these steps, and as we're witnessing ourselves, we're witnessing all kinds of opportunities for non-attachment. And without going into too much detail, I think it's worth acknowledging that we're not attached. There's so many levels of this, right? We're not attached to ourselves and what comes out of us. We're not attached to the outcomes of the feedback that we seek. We're not attached to how we think um, anything's going to go for us. So as we're playing with these different steps, they might trigger attachments in different ways. And whatever is or isn't coming up for us also lands in that opportunity to see the divine perfection, to get to know ourselves better, and to play in the way that makes the most sense for us in any given moment. Now, the next step that's outlined in the book is to find a finished piece and in some way ask to show it, whether that's a joining something that's already going on at a long-term care facility and playing one of your pieces, or a small cafe that's showing local artists' paintings, poetry slam, open mic at a coffee house, any of those kinds of things where you could read a paragraph or uh, share your expression in some way. Most towns have some kind of artists' village or artists' collective, and sometimes it takes a bit of digging to find that. But even in your small town, you might be surprised who is getting together and finding ways to support the arts, support the artists, and support each other. So that is the final step in that activity, is show it in some way. Those of you who play here with us every week off camera, you're already doing that. We're taking the time to share our expressive works, and this is some of the reason that the Yoga for the Creative Soul Facebook group was created in the first place, was so that you could play with expressing and sharing in a safe environment, being seen and supported. So some of it is about enlightenment as a creative journey, and some of it is about mental health and trauma recovery through expressive arts. And those things wind up coming together in really beautiful ways within us. So as we're focusing today on that final step of non-attachment, I ask you to observe the places that attachment pops up in your life, and to remind yourself in that gentle voice, in that true self creative soul place, that all is well within you and through your output, to stay on the path of witnessing and appreciating yourself, and to gather with like-minded others as much as possible. So please feel welcome to hop in and join us any Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern. Post to the Facebook group, join us there, comment on what your friends are posting, give them that support, let them know what your instincts and reactions are. And remember, you don't have to just post what we're working on that week. You know, we have members who are quilters and needlepoint folks who paint and sing and play musical instruments, who are doing their own crafts and hobbies, and we want to see that as well. Um, One of our members just had a memoir get published, and that's been posted to the group. That's right, right on. Best wishes and congratulations. We want to be able to celebrate with you. So please do, in large and small ways, let us know how your creative journey, your healing journey, your journey of self-love and self-care is going there in the Yoga for the Creative Soul group. And hold it with open hands. Non-attachment is non-clinging. And in these open palms, like holding sand or water, the goodness has space to collect. So leaving you with that image of non-attachment, I wish you great thanks for being here and lots of love. Feel welcome to reach out to me through the Yoga for the Creative Soul group, or message me one-on-one if you're looking for some individual attention or feedback. Next week, a few housekeeping things. Next week, we are going to round out the chapter, and then we'll take 2 weeks off over the busyness of the holiday season, coming back the first week of January. And in the meantime, I am still available to you in those methods I just mentioned, and the next trauma aware training is booked for in person right over the Canadian border in St. Catharines, Ontario. So just a hop, skip, and a jump from the US. So you're welcome to reach out to me for information about that as well. I wish you all the best through the festive season. I know it can be challenging for folks. We're still here for you. Keep in touch through social media and other means. And happiness onwards as you move into your New Year's intentions in 2022. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,